Behind every great product is a great seal. Join us at the crossroads of preeminent product design engineering, seal mastery, and supply chain excellence, and learn from the makers of our future.
Well, welcome to Makers of Our Future. I'm really glad you're joining us today, hearing from the people behind the products that are changing the world and a discussion about the seal industry that supports that. Here at Darcoid, we decided to make this podcast as a searchable store of knowledge, hopefully something that up-and-coming engineers can hit up as they're getting to grips with seals. I'm Bill Sharratt. I'm Senior Vice President of Business Development at Darcoid, and I'm your host for today. My guest today, I'm reading from my script now, is a major design engineering contributor behind a brand that makes the world a better place. Over his career, his products have advanced scientific study and analysis, improved learning outcomes for students, and at his current company, those products improve performance for riders, athletes, runners, hikers, and even boost the tactical effectiveness of military units around the world. The brand is CamelBak, the creator of a revolutionary product category in personal hydration systems. And our guest is Jeff Davies, CamelBak's design engineering manager. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Oh, thank you, Bill. I appreciate the invite and look forward to chatting with you a little bit.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Tricky question to start with. My mother's maiden name is Davis, so I'm assuming we must be related. Have you got any Welsh in your background by chance?
There is Welsh and German. Yeah. Very much. I find it's a pretty common name. As I started researching, over in England.
I love going to the Gold Country and looking around, and you look at the old cemeteries. It's strange how many Davises there are, right? So Welsh miners came to dig for gold, I guess, right?
Interesting. Yeah. It's like the Smiths, I guess, over here.
Excellent. So what brought you to engineering, Jeff?
Well, that's a great question. I went to school here in Santa Rosa at the JC, decided that I was going to take a technical path very early on. Coming out of high school, I enjoyed physics and math and that kind of thing. So really sort of never wavered, I guess, went right through into engineering purely because I like hands-on and just building things, really kind of seeing the design come to fruition and seeing the creations out in the world benefiting people. So that was, it's a big drive that I stuck with.
And so Cal State Sacramento was where you got your credentials, yes?
I did, yeah. Yep, went from the JC, a couple of years there. Highly recommend if you have the opportunity, go to a JC because it does make the transition a lot easier and at a much lower cost. So it's a great transition.
Good advice. I know we're going to touch on seals later, I'm sure, but I like to ask, how much did you learn about seal when you were studying at Cal State?
A big fat zero.
We've got to do something about that.
Absolutely. I agree. No, I would say, no, there was really no talk or discussions or analysis on any kind of seal mechanisms. This was really school of hard knocks, really going into the industry and learning.
Yeah, it seems a common theme. I think it's a learn as you go kind of industry expertise for sure.
Sure.
First job out of school, Corrie Electronics. And the aerospace business up in Washington. Is that
up in Washington? Yeah.
So Boeing and such like being close to that?
Yep, it was. In fact, prior to that, my first, and it's not even on my LinkedIn, but I worked as a rocket scientist actually down in the San Jose area. So worked for doing ignition systems for solid rocket motors. So that kind of got me into the aerospace defense contracting world for about 4 or 5 years. Then transferred up to Seattle and worked for a startup company up there, and then led into Corrie Electronics, where that was very much defense contract related. One of the very unique spots in Seattle that had all of their manufacturing, prototyping, their labs all in one building in downtown Seattle. So,
oh, nice.
It was a nice, that was probably my best learnings as an engineer, to really walk downstairs and talk to the tool shop and
so hands-on. You're working with the makers, and you could turn stuff on the lathe and.
Yep.
Excellent.
It was it was a very unique position. 400 or 500 people there, and a lot of fun stuff we did.
And really good coffee when you needed it.
Good coffee. Love that. Yeah.
So what pulled you down from Seattle to come further south?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. In fact, I started really my career down in the Bay Area, and was offered a startup job up in Seattle. It was an interesting company. We, at the time when computers, and I'm dating myself now, when computers first came out, we actually designed a automated ticketing machine for the ski lift industry. So that was a fun project, fun few years, but startups certainly have their risks, but I got to wear a lot of hats. So that's what took me to Seattle, worked a couple of different companies up there. And then I decided to come back home. Quite honestly, I think the gray drove me away, and not the rain from Seattle. So I wanted to get back home, back into the Bay Area. So, and near family. So
good. Then the Pathways Group. I tried looking at them. Are they still in business?
No, they are not. And that was part of the startup company. In fact, they came back twice to the startup company, really to do something different. And they open up offices down in the Bay Area. So decided to follow back and made a stab at it again. And just as startup companies go, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And in this case, it was a fantastic learning lesson.
I don't know. It kind of talking about gold rush. It's kind of that gold rush mentality. Everyone thinks, "Oh, startup, path to riches and fabulousness." Exactly. And most of the miners didn't find gold, and they all had dreams of striking it rich. How do you choose when you're looking at startups?
That's a great question. I think it's all about the visionary, and it's the guy that's got the ideas. So this person really did have some vision. He really kind of got his chops in the Microsoft industry up in Seattle, and sort of was working for them, worked for IBM. So had a lot of confidence, I guess, in that leadership and that person. But I think what happens is you get into startups, and what happened is we just started getting too diversified and too quickly. We didn't focus. It was really, we didn't stay in our core competency and started trying to do everything for everybody before ATMs. Before ATMs were popular. Yeah. So it really was that. And then getting in with the wrong investors, which I had nothing to do with. So there's a lot of shady folks out there sometimes too. So that, it's hard to choose. And my advice is just really kind of, I guess, meet with the people that you're, I guess, a face-to-face to really build your confidence and use your gut. If the little red flags are going off early, pay attention to them.
Okay, good advice. Yeah. So then Agilent and Biorad, less time at those positions, but certainly more stable companies. And we're now into scientific instrumentation and analysis equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, and Agilent was an interesting segue. It was once the startup company here down in the Bay Area didn't work out, I got a job at Agilent, went in with their Lightwave division, which was a brand new division for them. And it was really a project manager for project managers. It was a brand new position. I got to learn, a lot more techniques and methods behind project management and really servicing from that perspective. So as opposed to doing design work.
So moving from individual contributor to kind of pulling all the threads together and keeping on schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah. And being accountable for everything, but not having the responsibility. Or the other way around, whatever way it is. But yeah, that's how project management goes.
Yep. I was interested to see your time at Front Row, and I thought, what the heck is acoustic systems for education?
Sure. Yeah.
Talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, that was actually a fun job. It started out with the company name of Phonic Ear and then went on to Front Row. I was hired as a mechanical engineer, did all of the electronic packaging for them, but it was very specific to the education market. So it's allowing the teachers to project their voice in a classroom without these very loud speaker systems. So they were sometimes body worn microphones with wireless speakers that were put up in the classroom. So it allows that student at the back of the classroom to hear and not be embarrassed about raising their hand because they can't hear. So really a feel-good product.
Fantastic.
Small company, and just learned a lot. And they ultimately got bought by Oticon, the company that makes the hearing aids. Over in, I think in Copenhagen, I think. So got a couple of trips over there as an engineer to really work with their team. So, but very rewarding company, and
so by this time,
really benefited.
You really amassed a wide variety of skills, products covering a wide spectrum of specialties and so on.
Categories.
Yeah. At this point, are you feeling like you developed particular expertise? Or are you still feeling like, hey, I can handle anything?
Yeah.
What took you to CamelBak?
Great question. For me, going to CamelBak had a couple of good reasons that I wanted to pursue it. One is that I didn't know CamelBak was in the area I was working in the Bay Area. I was a dirt bike rider. That actually, I would have to say, a CamelBak actually did save my. I don't know if it saved my life, but it saved me from getting paralyzed. Went over the handlebars with a full reservoir on my back, and that reservoir actually protected my spine as I landed on the rocks. So
it was either that or bubble wrap, and you lucked out to be wrapped in a CamelBak.
So and then I come to find out CamelBak is in my area, so I went after it very aggressively. It was probably a good couple of years. Actually, was talking with Jeremy Galton. He's the one that interviewed me. Ultimately, ended up getting the job, but I really wanted to get some experience around plastics injection molding. That was my drivers. And then the fact that it's tied to the outdoor industry was just a kind of a icing on the cake. It really something that I felt passionate about, certainly knew about the product and believed in it. So, so that's why I made the jump.
No, great. I visited a few times, and I was really struck at how just the whole culture from the parking lot on, and the architecture and the LEED certified facility, and that was a really mold breaking move to be so environmentally aware and compliant.
Absolutely, it was a great transition. We had our office up in North Petaluma, and when we did move down to this south part of Petaluma, it was really a big change for us and a good one. Our office is, just all very much collaborative. So we can all talk to one another. There's not a lot of cubicle walls per se. So a lot of good lighting and very sustainable. So
nice.
It fits our culture.
Beautiful. So plastics and molded plastics, you want to pick up some expertise there. Is that where you landed straight away?
Yeah, it is actually. In fact, when I came to CamelBak, I was hired as the military product engineer per se. So I worked on what they call GMI, Government Military Industrial Products, for about the first couple of years. first products I worked on were really gas mask adapters that tie into our hydration system. So very much a large majority of injection molded plastics, springs, O-rings, seals, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Oh, you said O-ring. We got to talk seal now. Sorry.
Absolutely.
So were you going by the book every time in terms of your design approach? Did you have to take custom pathways?
I did, actually. Everybody's probably in the seal industry is pretty familiar with the Parker Hannifin O-ring guides. Those were baselines for me to get started on doing seal design. Ultimately, though, in injection molding with the tolerances that are very, the tight tolerances are very tough to achieve in an injection molded part. So we did have to make some provisions on some of the gland widths and gland depths and O-ring diameters. So some of them deviated and it was purely by test that we had to discover that.
So, and you got slides that you need to accommodate on your tool, which can put leak paths right across the seal face, right? So
the parting lines, So that's a big one when you've got parting lines coming through your critical sealing interfaces. Those are areas where you really have to work with a molder to make them aware that there's some critical surfaces that really can't have a parting line. Sometimes you can't avoid it, so they really have to go in and fine tune the tools to actually eliminate that to a certain point.
And so, from the seal perspective, you've got the tolerance stack up, the nominal, the maximum material condition, minimal, and you got to figure all that out with quite a wide tolerance gland that the seal sits in.
Yeah, in fact, we're working on a design right now that's very much more of a flat face seal. And we're dealing with probably about 3 or 4 different tolerance stack ups, I guess, if you will, that add up. And we're trying to do an overmolded silicone gasket onto a base plastic part. So this is one of our first overmolded parts we've been doing in silicone, or that we've done. So a lot of interesting challenges there. Learning.
Oh, for sure. No, and good luck with it. Do you, when you're overmolding and it's limb silicone, that's some expensive tooling. So how do you, at what point do you say we're confident that we're going to hit this and kick off your tooling?
Good question. I would say probably about 90% of all of our new product introductions at CamelBak, we will budget for a prototype tool. So we'll end up doing a single cavity of anything we do, just of the learning lessons that we have to, account for. And it does save them money. It takes a lot of time in the front end. So we probably add about 3 or 4 months to our schedules. So we really have to, at the front end, plan for that. But that gives us the opportunity to really learn before we go into a multi-cavity tool situation. With limb, it's certainly a challenge. It is a very expensive tool. And
so limb being liquid injection molding, correct?
Yeah, liquid injection molding. Yeah. So we are factoring in a single cavity prototype tool for this one. It's costly, but I think it's going to pay off in the end.
So one of the things we really monitor very carefully is when we have a seal design, a custom seal, and it moves from a single cavity prototype to a multi-cavity. It might be hundreds of cavities. It might be 24, Moving from prototype to scale manufacturing can be a bloody minefield of things that can go wrong, so that cavity 28 is slightly different from cavity 21.
Sure.
Controlling that is a major component of what we do with our manufacturing partners and our quality team. I would assume it's something similar for you.
Yeah, very much so. It's important to, get however you can possibly get it as cavity IDs on all of your parts, because these things pop out of the mold, as you know. You don't know what cavity they came out of. So getting creative with cavitation markings, and then statistical process control. So we've got a micro view optical comparator that we can actually get some measurements on soft parts and calculate roundness or diameters on parts that typically don't want to hold their shape very well. So you can do kind of a mathematical algorithm. So we do a lot of that, and it has to be controlled. Our cavitation on silicone probably gets up to 16. It kind of its maximum on 16 cavities for production, but it gets tricky.
And how much into the making of the sausage do you need to get in terms with the guy who's operating the tool, the press, and knowing all the press dynamics? Do you have to get into that control, or do you leave that to the molder?
We leave that to the molders typically. So we'll do design DFM, design for manufacturing analyses, and we'll basically shoot our 3D designs overseas along with drawings and get feedback accordingly. So but we do typically stay out of the processing aspect of it. Our engineers will travel to China probably, back in the day when we could, couple 2-3 times a year. And we find that shaves off weeks, if not months, of just being FaceTime with the engineers and the factory floor.
Yeah, we're on parallel paths here, Jeff. I mean, we do the same with our seals wherever they're made. Our quality team is there, or used to be. And having those relationships, if nothing else, is so critical.
Sure is.
To fixing stuff when the wheel's going to fall off the wagon. It always does somewhere along the line.
It's Murphy's Law.
Yeah. Being able to move fast and know who to speak to affect some change is priceless for sure. Yeah.
It sure is. Yeah. And certainly that's part of our supply chain challenges right now, or just that. It's really not being able to get over there to China, Asia, to really work with the factories. So we're doing weekly meetings, at night, our time to keep the ball rolling as best we can, and lots of FedEx shipments going back and forth. So we're managing it as best as we can, but we are feeling the delays they're in.
I mean, total parallel paths. I mean, so you're a forward-looking, make it better, next product iteration, driving product, market growth as much as you can. But if you're anything like us, you've probably spent a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, checking out supply chain disasters.
Absolutely. I think that is a very large portion of the work. I mean, I think our NPIs and the design aspects are sometimes 20%, and that's the fun part for the engineers. But on the other end, it's just what you say. It's making it work and getting it built that really gives you some challenge and some fun times too. I mean, I've worked with some pretty smart people over in Asia, and I think that's the fun part, is really to pick up techniques from all over the world on people with different talents and taking some of those nuggets with you. So pretty valuable.
Knowing the right people, having the relationships, and yes, for sure, selecting the right partners. We've been forced looking at resourcing, second sourcing, where there is a supply chain disruption that cannot be surmounted, and we have to look elsewhere. Have you been chasing any of those, and how carefully do you approach something like that?
That's a real good question. We're going through that with one of our major suppliers in China right now, and in fact, they have, over the last couple of years, been moving their factory, or at least duplicating their factory, in the Dominican Republic. And so, you can imagine, as we generate a lot of these bottles got a lot of air in them. So you throw them in a container, you're shipping a lot of air across the ocean. So, it just makes sense to really have your supply chain as close and on the same continent. So we're looking at some pretty significant lead time savings. But the challenges are that, that factory that's been producing for us is really starting to have to downsize a little bit too, to account for the other. So so managing that while this other transition is going on is tricky. We do our manufacturing of our reservoirs down in Tijuana. So our reservoirs are the bladders that go in the backpacks. And, we're certainly looking at supply chain issues there. So Asia has sort of stepped up, and our manufacturers over there to actually look at the potential of manufacturing reservoirs. So that gets tricky when you've got a supplier that's used to having, all the business, having to split it out. So
yeah.
Yep.
That's tricky. And then the material, the end product has to meet your specification. We're constantly, asked, well, it's just a nitrile O-ring 70 durometer. That can't be hard to get that from somewhere else. It's like, there's so much more to it than that. And knowing how it's used in your particular use case and what you can get away with and what you absolutely don't touch.
Yep.
So having your expertise, depth of knowledge in how stuff is made, scaled up, controlled, where the landmines are, right? For if someone wants to help out with a shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, sometimes those shortcuts happen when you're so far away without you knowing. And so that, you have to get in some forensics engineering sometimes on parts that'll come in that you can't figure out why they're failing all of a sudden. And you dig into root cause and find out it was a material shift or an additive or a tweak on their cycle times to save some money that ultimately can bite you on the other end. So you're right. There's a lot of landmines, and I guess the material supply is a big challenge right now. We're having shortages like nobody's business right now, and so we're I'm
done with using the word unprecedented. It does tend to pop up in every other sentence.
I know it.
I swear. I mean, I think Davies, I'm not sure you're a cousin. We might as well be brothers. We live in the same
industry.
Yeah. Good grief.
Yeah, we better not do it. 23andMe. You never know.
Indeed. So let's talk about your career at CamelBak. And I'm interested to know, you were came in as a senior contributing engineer, and with you said you had the military portfolio essentially.
Right.
Transitioning into management, how difficult is it not to do work for your reports, because you know how to do it, kind of a thing?
I'm still learning that, to be honest with you. I like to get my fingers in it. I would have to say probably the fact that I've worked for a startup company, I'm just wired to go get the problem solved. I will dig in and do whatever it takes. And if it's not my job description, it doesn't matter. I'll try and find an answer to it. So I do find challenge with that. And it's something that, I'm constantly working on, is to build my team's capability and really let them run with it and trust them. So I've got to let them sort of swim and guide and mentor them along the way. But it's I would say, one of the more significant challenges for me going into management to break away. And quite honestly, we've got 3 mechanical engineers. One's myself, and the number of new products on our roadmap kind of require me to get involved. So I will typically pick the low-hanging fruit, the ones that are really, not technically challenging, but really are going to absorb a little bit of time. And I'd rather have my engineers on the more complicated, the funner projects for them. So, it's something that as we grow, I will find myself having to do more of the management and really break away. So, still a work in process on my side.
I get the sense that you're super humble, and I know that because you failed to mention that you started your career as a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
And I should imagine that that mentorship is a key part of your team's success. So worth noting. As a a young engineer coming into business, what top tips would you have? And then I'm going to ask you a SEAL top tip. But for people coming into engineering out of school, what do you look for? What traits do you look for in when you're looking to hire, for example?
Yeah. Well, I think, we recently just did hire a mechanical engineer probably about less than a year ago. And I'd say some of the traits I really was looking for is the communication skills and just being able to articulate. I know interviews you're nervous and understand that, but when you really know your stuff, let's say, it's just having that confidence to project and articulate the information. I look at some of the classwork they've done and all that, and I think what's more important for me is having that internships experience. If you're in school, go get some temporary, summer work, whatever. That really stands out for me as somebody that really does get into the working world and not just coming right out from a theoretical classroom environment.
Yep.
So really that made a difference. And yeah, I think just really looking for somebody that doesn't really act like they know it all. So not having a chip on their shoulder, very, very much being humble and wanting to learn and anxious to learn. So
great. Excellent.
Yeah.
So what about SEALs do new engineers need to know that might not be completely intuitive?
Prototype a lot and as fast as you can. So really that's, I think, the lesson learned. What we're doing at CamelBak is we'll use our 3D printer to print mold halves and do some rudimentary understanding of how the part might behave, because there's a lot of nuances in the dynamics of how the silicone compresses and how it moves that you learn a lot from just getting that casting. It may not represent the right durometer, but at least it gives you a sense of how it moves and what's going on. So just rapid and as quick a prototyping you can. And understanding that with silicone, you can get away with a lot more than you can injection molding. So you can have undercuts and all of these weird shapes that you typically can't with a silicone part or injection molded part.
Right.
So that gives you a lot of flexibility, but it certainly can then also bite you on the other end too. So
why is that, Jeff? Why the flexibility? Is it because you can literally pull a rubber component out of an undercut situation?
Out of an undercut situation.
Detooling, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And that's the magic of silicone. We love, I guess, the aspect of designing with it, but very challenging to get those seals to work. And all I can say is use as much of the rapid prototyping as you can. I know 3D printing of silicone is starting to get some chops. We're paying attention to that. And then typically we can do seals over in China in about 2 weeks on just a single cavity, open close type of arrangement. So that's I think the big one. And again, take advantage of 3D printing. That's changing our world.
Absolutely. It's good to hear. We've been keeping an eye on the materials, how close to elastomer properties they're getting.
Yeah.
It's news to me on the silicon front, so I'm going to check that out.
Sure. Yeah.
Urethane has been there for a while, but a lot of our elastomer families, fluorocarbon, nitriles, EPs, they're still very much limited to compression molding or sometimes transfer.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have a fast turn prototyping is key. We've understood that. And test bench, you get it on test, compare it to baseline. We've certainly built out a lot of capability there because, people would typically say, try this one. try this one. But if we can do pre-validation to get us much closer to the bullseye, it saves so much time for sure.
Yeah. I mentioned a project we're working on now with a kind of a flat face seal. We generated about 3 or 4 different gasket profile designs out of that. Just to what you said, lots of iterations and having a plan B and a plan C and a plan K, really just have as many as you can.
Yeah.
Because they are cheap tools. They're fast. So do as many alterations as you can and change your durometer too. That's another one that we learn a lot is get them in 40, 50, and 60 shore A when you can.
No, that's
all the
good.
studies.
Yep. So I know we touched on it earlier, but when something starts leaking unexpectedly, so often we'll get a panic call saying, "What's wrong with your seal? Show me what's changed with your seal." We tend to try and pump the brakes and ask around that. Do you have a similar process?
Very, very much so. I think I've mentioned that it's rarely the seal that's causing the problem. It's all of the it's the 2 mating components that you got to seal against that something's gone awry, or you get a parting line flash, or something's gone out around on you. So usually that's been our root cause discoveries.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes those can't get fixed, and we got to change our seal because it's cheaper to do that. And then you design a little bit more interference in. So it really
good.
It depends.
Good stuff. We've covered a lot of ground. Where's your career going? Where do you see yourself in a few years?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't want to date myself, but certainly I've got a lot of years. I'm coming up close to 40 years in the industry. So, but I see myself definitely sticking with the CamelBak team. Just the fact that we've got an outdoor culture mindset, and the folks are very, very fun to work with. I love working with industrial designers. So I see myself sticking around, working into the senior management level, growing the engineering team. So getting it back to where we were, 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That excites me, is to get that growth going. And
good.
Our corporate ownership is really in back of us. So they've really done some amazing things for the company that really give us the bandwidth to make that happen. So,
well, it's clear that you found a really good home and somewhere that you can make a major difference at. So, hats off to you, Jeff. Well done.
Appreciate that, Bill.
Actually, I was thinking about something. You're talking about dating yourself and almost pre-computer and so on. Did you learn hand drafting as part of your training?
That's interesting. Yes, I was thinking back on that just a while ago, and I was actually on a board with a pencil back when I was working for the solid rocket motor company, and very distinctly remember having a drafting board in my cubicle that we did all of our sketching on. And in fact, that company was the first to bring in a Unigraphics computer, and I was so enamored with it. I was the first one to learn to actually draw in 2D on it. So that was way back.
So is there any benefit in the pencil sketch, the pencil drawing, in terms of you can't rush it? It's a process. Is it more meditative, kind of in the moment? I still find myself doing that. I'll pull out paper when I've got to come up with some kind of a new geometry or really dig into it. I'll start sketching by hand. It's just faster. I could take a photo of it and send it over to my engineers. Getting on a CAD and trying to brainstorm and sketch things in 3D, it can be time consuming. So I still revert to the pen and paper quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same thing. Sit down and just draw something up in CAD. The spontaneity is gone. You're easily distracted.
Yes. Yeah, you're caught up in the tool itself.
And then you got to answer an email. Yeah. Sketching is good.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. We've mentioned CamelBak maybe a few dozen times, but shout out to the organization. What would you like people to know if and when you're building out that team?
Yeah.
In terms of coming to work for you, Jeff?
Well, yeah, I think CamelBak, the fact that it's linked to the outdoor industry really kind of brings a little bit of a passion from some of our employees that usually they'll go to work for us because they're an outdoor person. So that passion really resonates through the company, and it's all facets from hiking to biking to motorcycling and ATV and even the military have a high respect for us. So so there's a real diverse group within CamelBak, and all of them are, I think, typically there for really their passions, and that really changes the attitude. There's a lot of collaboration and I guess excitement within the teams that might not be there with some other high tech company where you can barely pronounce the name of the technology that you're working on. So
yeah.
And the fact that this is it's a healthy product, so that has a big benefit. And our sustainability story is really growing. That's something that we just won't let up on. I think by 2025 we want to be 50% sustainable materials. So that resonates, I think, with a lot of the younger crowds and the millennials coming in. In the management, just a ton of confidence with them and just how they manage it. And it's very thoughtful and it's not a dictated type of management structure. They very much value the employees and put a lot of confidence into them. So really, you can kind of come in and define your paths at CamelBak. And so I think as we grow, it's just going to get better. We've got a lot of space in our building right now because there's a lot of folks working from home on a more permanent basis. So so there's a lot of room for growth, and that's really what our management has challenged us with, is to double our revenue in the next, I think, 3 years. So so that's a big goal.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah, not kidding.
No, I'm sure you're putting the pieces in place. I'm sure you can pull it off. I'll be keeping an eye, see how that journey goes. That's really
Thank
cool.
you. Yep.
So who do you think, in terms of getting you to where you are now? We all stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us. Who do you call out as people who've had major influences in your career?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I would say it really didn't come from family members. It really came from my, I think, experience in high school and getting hooked up with the right peer group, and then right into the JC. So really, just the like-minded mindset of folks that I hung around with in school, and really helped to drive me and keep me pushing through to become an engineer. And then really getting out into my first job and having a manager that really took me under his wing and mentored me, and just a real sharp rocket scientist that he was fun to learn from. Just, I guess, surrounding yourself with the right kind of like-minded people, and you're going to experience managers and people through your careers that you're going to get something out of that really makes it fun.
No, that's moving forward with intentionality and all of that. That's very cool. Good advice. All right. Do you have any questions for me, Jeff, or anything that you'd like to touch on that we haven't discussed?
No, I think no big questions. I will say, in a shout out for Darcoid, you guys did probably our most complex seal design for us back probably about 6 years ago on our reservoir cap. It was an overmolded seal. So that's still cranking cranking out revenue to this day and doing very well for us. So it was a huge shout out and a huge learning for our team. So just kudos to your team.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
helping us with that. Yeah,
and we do it with the right partners and a network of expertise. And yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Good. Well, I think we're at a wrap at this point.
Okay.
Jeff, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And we've learned a lot and just looking forward to developing the relationship. Thanks.
Fantastic. I appreciate the opportunity, Bill.
Thanks for listening to the Makers of Our Future podcast. Behind every great product is a great seal. Learn more about how we can help at www.darcoid.com. That's DARCOID.com. The best seal, on time, zero defects, Darcoid.